I know this is a little late to talk about, but I figure I might as well talk about it because no one's. People are saying speculations and theories about this. So, what happened to the money that went missing in Ukraine? Where did all that money go? Well, I can tell you one thing: it didn't go to me. But I know. I can tell you where it did go. It didn't go to yachts, it didn't go to Zelensky, it didn't go to any of that. It went to its second government. And we talked about this in a previous video. What the second government is. The shadow government or the dual government, whatever you want to call it, that existed in Chernobyl exclusion zone. That government is known as pretty... I mean, it's not really corrupt, but it could definitely be used for notorious things. So what happened was, sorry, something just came up on my screen. What happened was it was laundered through, it went through its second government, the Chernobyl exclusion zone, and that went out. The only logical conclusion you could make from that, after there, it would have went to China, and then it went back into Russia. It would have went into Russia, and that's what stabilized its ruble. So, I'm gonna type in here. So, I'm gonna say... because it was shortly after the war started. A few months, probably. When did the ruble stabilize? Because it went hard down when the war first started. The ruble stabilized around late April to May 2022. Yeah, it was a few months later. After experiencing severe collapse following the invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022. And the imposition of harsh Russian sanctions. So it plunged to record lows. It was way down, guys. It was a steep drop, reaching over 130 ruble per USD in early March. March to April 22, the Russian Central Bank implemented aggressive capital controls, including raising interest to 20%, requiring exporters to convert a portion of foreign currency earnings into rubles. Think of it like this. If the Chernobyl exclusion zone is operated and is a backdoor to the Russian government, and Moscow controls it, the Russian Central Bank could impose this on Chernobyl exclusion zone. So interest rates to 20%, requiring exporters to... That's how you launder the money. That's how you funnel the money. Actually... if you did it like that, you wouldn't need to go through China. You could just do it directly because it wouldn't be a single transaction. It would be paying the Russian government whatever it needed to do. And that wouldn't necessarily be on Ukraine's books. You just have to have a product or something to put over there. So, that... I didn't think about it like that, but that's what I could see in this. After what we were talking about in the structure and the Soviet and all that. So, requires exporters to convert a portion of foreign currency earnings into rubles. So, if Chernobyl gets foreign currency, USD, then the earnings could be converted into rubles. That would be the laundering scheme. Restricting foreign currency transactions. Late April to May 2022, these measures caused the ruble to rebound rapidly. So, there was no, as far as I'm aware, there was no income going into Russia at this time. China, like, you would have to plan that really well for it to rebound rapidly. And it did return, it did stabilize. So, that would have to be done way in advance. And the only way you could have done that was if you could launder money from somewhere. And mid to late May, it had returned to pre-invasion levels, even becoming one of the best performing currencies in the world on paper during that time. Exactly, it was laundered through there. That's the only thing you could have done. You could have done it to China, but because of the Constitution, Russian Constitution, they could have used the Chernobyl or that government to do it. So in short, the ruble stabilized in April-May 2022 due to aggressive financial controls and energy export revenues, which is also a key word, energy export revenues. Chernobyl is an energy, quote-unquote, energy exporter, even though it's decommissioned. Although I think some of Chernobyl is used a little bit. One of its reactors is working, I think. So it's not fully or maybe it is fully decommissioned. I don't know. You'd have to Google it. Well, let's Google that. Is Chernobyl still in operation? Is not the last reactor was shut down on December. I knew that it was decommissioned and all that, but I thought they had like a little bit of power being reduced. Just a little bit. It's still operating afterwards. Was urgent priority. But anyways, Chernobyl, for those who don't know, Chernobyl was the first time they actually did energy exports on electricity. I believe it was Belarus. Let me find that. Actually, I think Judge P. Yeah, it was something to help their economy. Yeah, Chernobyl did export energy to the Soviet Union. In fact, that was its primary purpose. You can also see that symbolically, export it. Look into, I'm not going to talk about it here, but look into the RBMP. It's a theory, it's conspiracy, but people say that it could convert to plutonium, which would be used for nuclear bombs. So the nuclear power plant located in what is now northern Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union's centralized energy grid and contributed significant electricity to the region, especially to Ukraine, Belarus, and parts of Western Russia. Yeah, they were getting paid for this. The plant had 4 RBMK 1000 reactors, each with a capacity of 1000 megawatts. It was one of the largest power plants in the Soviet Union at the time. Chernobyl's electricity was fed directly into the unified Soviet energy grid, supplying both industrial and civilian infrastructure across the Union. It was intentionally built near the Belarusian and Russian borders, allowing efficient distribution of power to neighboring republics. Before 1986 disaster, Chernobyl was a key asset in the USSR's push for cheap, large-scale nuclear energy, seen as a modern symbol of progress. After the 1986 accident, the area was evacuated, but some reactors, like Reactor 3, continued operating until 2000, still exporting electricity even under restricted post-disaster conditions. So that's the story about Chernobyl, and that's in the government and CZ. And you could definitely see that. And like it says, this is operating until 2000. So the Russian Constitution, of course, it wasn't a Soviet Constitution, but that's an interesting story. There were 2 governments in Russia, actually. One was the communist government and the Free Russian Federation government. Eventually, there was this huge breakout fight, war, tanks were involved, they shot at the Kremlin. You can read about that. And eventually the Russian Federation won, quote unquote, and that's the current constitution they have now, which has been changed because of Putin and all that. So in all that, can have Chernobyl and its government to be used as a scheme for the war. That's why Ukraine couldn't trace it, because it would be sent to Chernobyl. It'd be like any other, and they just mark it off. They say no one wants to know about this, or whatever the case may be. But you could definitely get away with that. So that'll be all for this video, and I'll see you guys later. It's something to think about.